Morning class, happy e-learning day. Just a couple reminders. You need to watch this video in whole. You need to complete the Canvas check that will have some questions from this video. That will count as your attendance for today. And then you need to make sure you are ready for the test tomorrow. So we will still be testing tomorrow. I'm going to give you some information for final exams review. So finals are next week. We are still on schedule for final exams. That's not going to change. So on Tuesday will be period 1. On Wednesday will be period 2 and 3. And on Thursday will be period 5 and 4. For your final exam, I will give you a colored sheet of paper at school. However, if you want to start working on this today, you can. And then you can just attach it to it. So what you'll have is you'll have one side of the paper will have a photocopy of the formulas that you'll be allowed to have. So it'll have like point slope form, slope intercept form, those formulas you typically are given. And then you will be able to use the other side of the sheet of paper for a cheat sheet, as you all like to call it, or reference sheet or whatever. And you can write anything you want on that side of the sheet of paper. Sorry guys, I have a bit of a cough. So you can fill this with anything that you want on one side of a sheet of paper. So if you want to start today, you can just get a blank sheet of paper, whether it be white paper, whether it be lined paper. You can use one side of a sheet of paper. You can write as big or as small as you want. You can write anything that you want. So you can write every problem from the review packet that is posted on Canvas. You can write an inspirational poem because it makes you feel good. I don't care. It's just you only get one side of a sheet of paper. So as soon as you start going on the other side, I will take that paper away and put it in the trash before the test. So make sure that you're only using one side. So I'm going to go through here and give you some things that I think would be good advice to have on your reference sheet based on things that we have been working on this trimester. So anything is fair game for your final exam. Anything that we have done this trimester is fair game. It's about 40 to 50 multiple choice, I don't remember the exact number, and about 5 to 7 free response. One of the things to keep in mind is that we go back to the very, very beginning of the trimester, where you will have some questions on your final exam that are just adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing, like with a fraction, right? So you'll want to make sure that you can do basic operations with numbers, okay? You will want to make sure that you can combine like terms. So if you had something like 4 times x minus 7 plus 2x, right? This isn't solving because there's no equal sign. So you'd want to make sure that you would know to distribute. And then know that these are like terms, and so we could combine them. And so in a multiple choice question, you'd just be looking for 6x minus 28 in the multiple choice. You should be able to solve any equations. So 1-step, 2-step, multi-step, variables on both sides, no solution and all solutions. So you could flip back in your notes if you want all of those steps, right? We have those steps that said, if there are parentheses, we want to distribute. Now, I'm not necessarily writing tiny because I want you to be able to see it, but if you want to copy this down onto your own reference sheet, right, and you have your own sheet of paper that you're adding to right now, I would suggest not writing very big because we'll have lots of other things that we want to get through. Okay, our second step was that if there were like terms, we wanted to combine them. Third step was if there are variables on opposite sides. Oops. We would get them together with the opposite sign. And if I'm writing too fast, right, you can always press pause. Step 4 was if there was a large fraction. We would isolate it, which means gets it by itself, and then multiply by the denominator. Squeeze that word denominator in. Step 5 was undo addition and subtraction. Now, I think that the majority of you don't necessarily need these steps. Some of you might want them. Think about how you are in high stakes testing. Is it nice to have that? Do you care? I mean, it's up to you. It's your reference sheet as to what you want to add and write down. Okay, so then anything with solving, whether we are dealing with basic fractions, and that's my cat running through, which is why the table is shaking. Right, so if we have something like this, right, we should know that we're undoing subtraction with addition. And then we would undo multiplication with division, keeping in mind that dividing by 2/3 is the same thing as multiplying by 3/2. The cat is very interested in this video. So whether you were doing dividing by 2/3 or multiplying by 3/2, remember those are both the same thing. And we would get 18. Okay, which is different than if we had something like x minus 4 over 3, right? This was our large fraction. If we had a large fraction like this, we had to get rid of that denominator first. And then we would undo the subtraction. Okay. We should make sure we're okay with what happens if there's multiple variables. Right, so combining like terms, if they're on the same side, we get them together with the same sign. If they're on opposite sides, we get them together with the opposite sign. Again, you could write any of these examples down on your reference sheet. It's up to you. X minus x is 0. So there's no x left. So we'd be left with 7 equals -7. That is a false statement, so we would write down no solution. Okay, you might want to make a note that if we get a true statement for equations, it would be all solutions. We should be able to do all of these same types of things with inequalities. So solving them if an inequality sign shows up, keeping in mind that we now need to be more careful with our inequality symbol. So if we have something like 8 is greater than 6 minus 2c, okay, if we're here, we would want to move this 6 first. It's a +6, sorry, that's just the cat again. Okay, it's a +6, so we would move a +6 by subtracting 6. These cancel, we'd be left with a -2c. We undo multiplication with division. Multiplication and division, when we're multiplying or dividing by a negative, is a reason to flip the inequality sign. So here we would want to flip that inequality sign. But it is also a reason to flip the inequality sign if we need to rewrite it with the variable first. So we would need to flip it again to get that variable first. And that's how we would see the answer in multiple choice. We should also be able to graph inequalities. So we should know when to use an open circle, a filled in circle, and when to shade right and left. Okay, so if we're making our number line. Okay, when we don't have the solid line underneath it, that's going to be an open circle. And because this is sort of pointing to the right, we would shade to the right. Compound inequalities we should also be able to do. So we should know that compound and is where we are getting both. Compound or is where we have anywhere we have at least one. And we were just practicing these earlier for bell work, and this week or last week, I can't remember, but one of them. Okay, so this would be compound and, because we don't see the word and. It would be or if we see the word or. It would be and if we see the word and. If we don't see anything, it's and. Right, so if we cover up this end over here, so 2x plus 4 is less than or equal to 18, we would subtract 4 first, but now we're going to subtract in all 3 places. 6 minus 4 is 2. And then we will divide by 2. Again, if we wanted to graph this, we would make a number line. We would have a filled in circle at 7 and we'd be shading to the left. Remember, this we would need to rewrite. So this would really say x is greater than 1. So we'd have an open circle at 1 and we'd be shading this way. And since it's compound and, we want anywhere that we have them both. If it was compound or, we would copy down anywhere we have at least 1. And in this situation, it'd be all of the number line. We should be able to solve absolute value equations. So that's a big one that we probably have forgot. So if we have something like the absolute value of 2x plus 1 minus 3 equals 7. Okay, remember absolute value, we have 2 values that gave us the same value. So the absolute value of 4 is positive 4. The absolute value of negative 4 is also positive 4. So when we would go to solve these, we would get the absolute value symbol by itself. Okay. We would undo subtraction with addition. So we'd have the absolute value of 2x plus 1 equals 10. And now because absolute value allows for 2 options, right, we had to split this up into 2 choices. So we needed to consider that the absolute value of a number, if it's equal to positive 10, will still give us 10. And that if the absolute value of a number is equal to negative 10, right, if I take the absolute value of negative 10, that will also give me positive 10. And so we had to solve both of these separately. So we have now 2 equations. So my decimal lovers, if you wrote this as a decimal, that'd be fine. Just keep in mind in multiple choice, you would have to find it in the format it's given in multiple choice. Okay, but this one then has 2 answers. X can be 9 over 2 or X can be negative 11 over 2. Okay, so absolute value we have to have. Then we got into functions. So functions is where we just had some terminology. So things like domain, knowing that the domain is the X values. Okay, and knowing that our range is the Y values. And we should know that we list these in numerical order. No repeats. And in braces. Okay, again, if you say, I know all that information, I didn't need Mrs. McKinney to remind me, don't add that to your reference sheet. Okay, don't take up space with something that you say you don't need on there. It's up to you. You need to know that a function, right, is a relation. They're all relations, and some of them we call a function, and that's when the X value does not repeat. Okay, so you should be able to identify that something is a function. You should be able to complete a table. So we looked at that in bell work as well. So if you were given a function rule, right? And you were given some values. You should be able to plug those values in and know that this is 2 times -2 minus 3, right? Which would be -4 minus 3, which would be -7. And then you just do the same process for each of these. Okay, so you should be able to do tables and completing those. You should be able to do function notation. So if we have something like f of x equals x minus 4, and you are asked to find f of 8, you should know that f of 8 is asking you to plug 8 in here, and you would be able to say, okay, well, I'm doing 8 minus 4, and so f of 8 is 4. You should be able to look at a graph and like know when it's increasing, decreasing, or constant. Right, that came up in our function unit as well. You should recognize a mapping. Okay, so this is a mapping, right? You should know that this tells us, like, there's other ways we could write this, that this means there's an ordered pair 0, 2, 3, 2, and 7, 4. You should know that this is a function because the x values don't repeat. We don't see 2 lines coming from it. Okay, so anything in that sort of function and relation thing. We still have to talk about graphing lines, writing equations of lines and systems, so sort of the second half of the trimester. We are going to do that in class on Monday. Since we'll test on Friday, we'll do that in class on Monday. And then you'll have your review packets. However, the review packet is also posted on Canvas. So if you want to get a head start and look through some of the review packet, you can look on tomorrow's date. But I'll link it in this post as well for the e-learning. You can look in either of those places. You can get a look at the review packet and you can start going through that and sort of see what problems you need to know and what they look like that match up with this information. My suggestion is that you don't kill yourself and try and study all at once, but instead I say you go through, the first half of the review packet and see if you're doing okay. If you have questions on things, just circle them and leave them blank, knowing that you need to ask me them in class. But then you can sort of cross off the list the problems that you don't know how to do or that you do know how to do, and just leave the problems that you don't know how to do for class on Monday. Okay, so enjoy your e-learning day. Make sure you complete the Canvas quiz for attendance. Make sure you know the information about what you can do with the reference sheet, and make sure you can access the final exam review packet.